We're going to hear from two experts today about how to protect yourself from falling victim to a scammer, which even the smartest people do. Goldie Trump is Montgomery College's internal audit director and leads fraud investigations on behalf of the college. Her organization manages the confidential reporting line, also known as a hotline, where students, staff, faculty, and community members can report fraud and suspicions of other types of wrongdoing. The college's confidential hotline is not being replaced by the FTC reporting line that Ari's going to talk about, but in coordination with Ari and the Federal Trade Commission, which I'll refer to a lot today as the FTC, the college is bringing more awareness about protecting yourself against fraud schemes. In his presentation today, Ari Lazarus from the Federal Trade Commission will talk about the top reported scams, including ones that reports to the FTC suggest disproportionately affect young adults. Ari will also go over how students and college employees can protect their personal information to keep it from getting into the wrong hands. Ari Lazarus is a consumer education specialist in the FTC's Division of Consumer and Business Education. He's worked extensively on various education campaigns, including online safety and privacy topics, student loan debt relief scams, and others. Ari's outreach work currently focuses on reaching college students, LGBTQ plus folks, and older adults, and sharing tips with them on how to avoid frauds and scams. Prior to coming to the FTC, Ari worked in personal financial management. Ari holds a master's degree in public policy from the University of Maryland and a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ari.
Thank you so much, Roberta. Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone. Like Roberta said, I'm here to talk about community college students and scams. I'm coming to you from the FTC in the Division of Consumer and Business Education. So this really is going to be focused on, we are going to focus a good amount of time on these scams that are targeting young adults. But of course, scams do target everyone. And so I hope that you'll find, ways to apply these tips to all of your lives, both at the college and, personally. So with that, I'll get started. So quickly, I'll just give a disclaimer. So I speak for myself, not for the commission, not for any individual commissioner, not for the FTC at large. I speak for myself. Okay, so just quickly, kind of what we're going to go over today. First, we're going to start with data and trends, and that'll kind of just give us some grounding of kind of, what is going on in the marketplace, what the FTC has been hearing from folks in terms of frauds and scams and young people. And then we'll talk more in depth about the top frauds affecting young adults. And then we'll get into protecting your information, which of course is for everyone. And then we'll talk about free FTC resources, and we'll wrap with helping your students avoid scams and, how do you have those conversations? Okay, so first we'll start with data and trends. Okay, so the FTC collects millions of reports on frauds, scams, and bad business practices from across the country, and we analyze it and it tells us what's going on. For purposes of today's conversation, I'm really going to focus on the top frauds affecting 20 to 29-year-olds. And of course, all of your students don't fall into that profile, but I know a large chunk do. And, just in terms of how we tend to segment our data, we do it by, age brackets. We don't have folks indicate whether they're a student or not. So this is kind of the best way to approximate it here. But as you'll see here, we did get a lot of reports from folks 20 to 29 in 2020. We got over 141,000 fraud reports, and 44% of those folks reported a loss. The total loss was over $186 million, and the median loss was 324. You'll see in terms of the top scams, the top one was online shopping. That was pretty much top across the board for different age groups this past year, especially with COVID. A lot of those were, folks were ordering in demand, PPE, masks, sanitizing spray, what have you, and it never shipped out, or they got something random like a pair of socks, so that the seller could say, we did send you something. So that's why online shopping is the beginning there, or the top there rather. Next is government imposters. Those are things like IRS imposter scams, where someone calls out of the blue saying, you owe this really big tax debt, you better pay now, you're going to get arrested. The last few years, we've seen Social Security Administration scams are actually kind of outrunning the IRS ones, where folks will say your Social Security number has been suspended. I don't know if anyone here has gotten those calls. I know I have, but that's a big one too. And then third, government imposter or business imposters, where someone's pretending to be a business, asking for your information or your money. Today, we're actually going to be focused on 4, 5, and 6, which is fake check scams, job scams, and employment agencies, and business and work at home opportunities. And these are all really interrelated. You'll also see that they have the highest median loss. A lot of job scams and business and work at home opportunities are fake check scams. And fake check scams in particular really hit the 20 to 29 age range really hard. They are multiple times more likely to lose money to these scammers. And so that's why I really wanted to focus on that today. We, of course, also do not have time to talk about everything today. So that's kind of the 3 I'm hoping to focus on. So before I kind of jump into those 3 types of scams, I also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the reports we get from folks across the board. I really like this graph because I think it really dispels the myth that scams are only a thing for that older adults experience. Everyone experiences scams and fraud, and we have the data to prove it. So here the yellow line is the percentage reporting a fraud loss. You'll actually see that younger folks, 19 and under and 20 to 29-year-olds are quite a bit more likely to report a loss than older folks. You'll see sort of the opposite trend in terms of median dollars lost, but generally we assume that's because older folks tend to have more money, they have a lifetime of earnings. And so it's not to say they're getting hurt more per se, it's all, of course, relative. And in some ways it can be more damaging when you're older to lose these big chunks of money, because it's much more difficult to re-earn that money. And I will also add that the median loss for fake check scams is closer to 2,000. So even though here overall the median average is 324, for the scams and frauds we're going to talk about today, it's much higher. Okay, so now let's get into these top frauds. So today we'll be talking about fake check scams, job scams, and business and work at home opportunities. And I'll talk about how they all kind of intersect. Okay, so fake check scams. So with scams in general, scammers have a million different stories of why they're doing what they're doing, why they need to send you this check, why they're asking for this information. So nothing I say today is going to be absolute, in the sense that it's not, when you hear about a scam or fraud or you experience one yourself, they're not necessarily going to fit perfectly into the examples I give, but kind of there's going to be some bright lines that I'm really going to talk about. And if you can look out for these kind of red flags, these bright lines, you can really avoid these frauds and scams. So for instance, with fake check scams, if someone sends you a check and asks you to send money back, that's a scam. Like plain and simple, no matter what their story is, that's a scam, across the board. Here are some examples of why someone might send you a check and ask you to send money back. They could say that you want a prize and you need to send back taxes and fees. Maybe you sold an item online and the buyer, quote unquote, overpays, and then you just send the money back. Or it could be, you're getting paid as a secret shopper and you're asked to wire back money. But in all cases, again, you're getting a check, they're asking you to send money back, and it's a scam. So why do these fake check scams work? So it's tricky. So, I know a lot of folks, understand that when a check clears, that the money is good, that it's there, right? That it's, it's all settled. But that's unfortunately not how it works. So banks actually have to make deposited funds available within days. It's the law, but uncovering a fake check can take weeks. But by then the scammer has your money and the bank's going to ask you to repay it. And so just because the check has cleared doesn't mean it's good. And yeah, it's a tricky one because I know it's kind of been drilled into our minds that, cleared checks mean that the money is good. And I think that's what trips a lot of folks up with this type of scam. So how do you avoid these scams? First, talk to someone. One huge tip for avoiding frauds and scams in general is to, pause, talk to someone you trust. Maybe it's someone on campus, maybe it's, a faculty or staff member, maybe it's a family or friend, and kind of talk them through what's going on. Scammers are often trying to rush people, making whatever their story is sound urgent. You need to act now, you're going to lose out on this opportunity. Or maybe if you don't do X, something really bad is going to happen. So you need to act right now. So just a big across the board tip is to pause, talk to someone you trust, and you can also contact your bank before you act. Second is don't take a check for more than your selling price. Again, that could lead to them telling you to send money back, which again is a scam. If you're selling online, you can consider using an escrow or online payment service. And again, never send money back to someone who sends you a check. If you spot this scam, we want to hear about it. You can report it to us at Report Fraud, and I'll talk more about our reporting at the end. Okay, so like I said, these all sort of intersect. So in 2019, we did a breakdown of fake check reports. And as you see, 51% of them were job and income opportunities. A huge chunk was mystery shopping, car wrapping was a big one, personal assistant, which is one that we'll talk about. And I'm also going to have Roberta talk about a story that happened to, or rather a attempted job scam that happened at Montgomery College involving personal assistant. And some other jobs are also in there. So like I said, there's a big overlap. There's also some online selling, which is why we have that tip about not having folks send you more money than you're selling something for, and other things. But by and large, job and income opportunities is really the big category. Okay, so now let's talk about job scams. Excuse me. So scammers advertise jobs the same way that legitimate employers do online, generally using things like job sites, social media, newspaper, TV, and radio. And they might promise you a job, but what they really want is your money and your personal information. Job scams take many forms. We'll talk about some of them in a moment, but they'll often do things like charge for job listings, special access to government jobs, or training for useless certifications. Some examples of job scams are mystery shopper scams. So with mystery shopper scams, it might sound like a dream job to get paid to shop. And some mystery shopping jobs are legit, but many of them are scams. Legit companies won't ask you to pay for certifications or a directory of jobs, or offer, or ask you to pay for a job guarantee. If someone asks you to pay for a job, full stop, that's a scam. You do not need to pay for a job. If someone asks you to deposit a check and send money back, that is also a scam. Another category is job placement service scams. So many staffing, temp agencies, and headhunters and other placement firms are legitimate, but others lie about what they'll do for you, promote outdated or fake job openings, or charge fees for so-called services. Generally, legitimate firms don't usually charge for finding you a job. They will charge the company that hires you. And then lastly, there's government and postal job scams. With these, you'll respond to an ad that promises a job with the federal government or postal service, but then you have to pay a fee to get the job or pay for study materials that they'll say will get you a high score on a postal exam. Information on federal or postal jobs are free and open to everyone. So those are, again, scams. Work at home scams. These, I think you may have heard of. There's two big ones, reshipping scams and reselling merchandise scams. The way that reshipping scams work is, there'll be a posting for a quality control manager or virtual personal assistant. The company will tell you that the job is to receive packages at your home, discard the original packaging and receipts, and repackage the products and ship them to an address that they give you, which is sometimes even overseas. The products are often things like high-end goods, like name brand electronics, bought using stolen credit cards. Just generally speaking, reshipping goods is never a real job. It's actually being part of a scam. And the company might tell you that your first paycheck will come after you work for a month or so, but it never does. And when you try and contact the company, you find that the phone number is dead, the website's down. And if you gave your personal information thinking it was for payroll, you might have an identity theft problem on your hands as well. Okay, then there's reselling merchandise. So with reselling merchandise scams, you get a call out of the blue offering a job, making money, buying brand name luxury products for less than retail, then reselling for a profit. But after you pay for the products, either nothing ever arrives or it comes and it's a pile of junk. Okay, so now before I keep going, I want to turn it over to Roberta to talk about some examples of these job scams that have happened at Montgomery College. Roberta?
Recently, I got an email from someone purporting to be a recruiter who had been hired by a local roofing company. The local roofing company was very real, very legitimate. I checked out their website, as I generally do with jobs that are posted. I checked on Google Maps to see that they were located where they're supposed to be located, and indeed they were. And because the recruiter sent this email kind of completely independently and not with any connection to the actual company that she was recruiting for, I reached out to the company separately. I went to their website, called them up and said, "Hey, are you working with this recruiter that's working for ostensibly a company called contractor.net?" And they laughed and they said, "No, we've never heard of the person." So of course I didn't post the job. So sometimes scammers will actually connect with a really legitimate business and share the address of that legitimate business. What tipped me is that the email domain for this recruiter was recruiter, it was their name at recruiter.net. And I said, that has nothing to do with the roofing company. So I'm going to call the roofing company. And I found the disconnect. So now I'm not sure whether that person was in there to steal personal information and do identity theft, or whether they were going to do a check scam. Another scam that recently came up is that many students and faculty at the college got an email ostensibly from UNICEF, which is a legitimate and wonderful worldwide relief organization, saying that they had an online internship. Well, I noticed that the email came from a faculty member who was sharing with us this wonderful internship opportunity, but it was a faculty member that I'd not heard of. And when I moused over her email address, the format for the email address was the format for a student email address and not the format for a faculty address. So I went on the UNICEF website. There was absolutely no indication that this internship existed. I called UNICEF, no indication that the internship existed. And then in the interim, in the next 5 minutes or so, I got a couple of emails from faculty saying, hey, maybe you should share this, in your college-wide emails about great internships. It sounds like a great internship. It came from a colleague. And it hadn't come from a colleague. It had come from a different student email address saying that it was really a faculty, saying that they were a faculty member. And what happened is, I think a couple of students had their emails hacked through phishing scams. These are things where you get an email that says, it's urgent. Click on this link to make sure your package gets delivered, or click on this link to make sure that your donation gets counted, or click on this link to donate without, our company's donating money to this great cause. And if you click on this link and put in your credentials, we'll donate money in your name. And people do that. They'll click on the link and they'll give their credentials to sign in. And it's not really what it says it is. And their credentials get stolen. And then somebody uses their email to send things like this UNICEF job. And it was definitely a scam. The worst scam that I dealt with was one where an employer posted on our eJobs online job board, and the employer was a local small business. They indicated, and it seemed like they were legit. The Google Maps connection said that it was in an office park. There was a website, even like a fake website that looked really good. I clicked through all the links on the website and it was set up. And they said they were looking for a receptionist for their office. And so I approved the job. And about a week later, a student who was very alert and wonderful emailed me and said, this seems weird to me. I applied for this job as a receptionist, and the employer emailed me back and said what they really wanted was a personal assistant to do some shopping for them, and that they were going to send me a check. So I immediately took the job down off of our eJobs website and emailed every student that that had even looked at the job and said, please do not respond to this. Please do not connect with this person. They are being removed from the site. This is quite probably a scam. So even with my best efforts, sometimes things slip through. So this is one of the reasons that we wanted to have this event today, because I want faculty and staff to be aware and students to be aware, especially faculty and staff, to share with students that if there's a job out there that seems too good to be true, it is. And if they're paying you $20 or $25 an hour and not asking for a lot of qualifications, yeah, it may be a scam. It's probably a scam. And if they don't interview you and want to see a resume and all of that, and they offer you a job, it's probably a scam, because scammers want to get your money or your identity as quickly as possible without as much time investment on their end as they can manage. So thanks, Ari, for letting me talk about what we've had locally.
So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to, so our general tips on avoiding job scams are Do an online search. So really just, what Roberta said. And this is, again, kind of a across the board tip for avoiding frauds and scams, or to do your research. Don't trust everything you read. There's lots of, misinformation and, scammers online and, and so forth. So definitely do your research. Second is to talk to someone you trust. Like I said, scammers are always trying to rush you. Pause, talk to a friend, a family member, talk to a staff, talk to Roberta, talk to a faculty member, and just really talk through, what this job offer is, and kind of walk through whether, it really seems to make sense. And then, again, this is another big bright line. Don't pay for the promise of a job. That is a scam 100% of the time. And lastly, don't bank on a cleared check. These fake check scams are happening, and they're hitting people really hard. And again, especially folks in their 20s. Again, the median loss was around $2,000. And so, this one's a tricky one, and it's really affecting young adults pretty heavily. Okay, so business opportunity scams. So if it promises guaranteed income, large returns, or a quote proven system, it's likely a scam. Even free or low cost systems to get your business started can quickly turn into a money pit, costing tens of thousands of dollars for mentoring or other services that promise to increase your business success, but really just leave you in debt. These business opportunity scams may also present as online business coaching programs where the promoters claim you can make big money with no experience. Their experts will teach you how to build a successful business on the internet. They might even say they're affiliated with some well-known sellers. They'll make it sound like it's easy to make money, and for a fee, they'll show you how to do it. And after you've invested thousands of dollars, you realize the scammers lied to you about how easy and lucrative the business model would be, and you are left with nothing. So how can you avoid business opportunity scams? Again, take your time, talk to someone you trust, do your research. These are just, kind of two big general ones for scams and frauds in general. Just take your time, don't be rushed. If generally anyone is rushing you to pay them, quickly, or asking for your personal information and they're saying it's urgent, that is a big red flag. So definitely pause, talk to someone you trust, do your research. Also, know that success stories and testimonials might not be true or typical. Again, that's, doing your research, searching the company plus complaint, searching the company, plus scam, to really try to vet, what's going on, and, are these success stories, what they appear to be. And then lastly, be ready for the upsell. If a business promoter or coach asks you to pay even more money to help your business succeed, stop and hang out. And make sure to consider details of the offer. Many of these offers are scams, especially when they rush you into making a quick decision. Okay, so here I'm going to pause to give you a break from my voice and to show you some examples of income scams, which is kind of the term we use generally, as an umbrella term for, job and business opportunity scams. We actually had an enforcement sweep where we brought several actions with, a few attorney generals. I think it was last December. And so this is going to talk through some of those examples and show you what some of those ads look like.
Scammers make big promises when they're pitching you a fake money-making opportunity. They'll say you can make hundreds, even thousands per week and change your life. But those promises of big money are all an income illusion. Hi, my name is Rhonda Perkins. I'm an attorney with the Federal Trade Commission, and I'm going to show you how to spot and avoid income scams. Income scams come in many forms and target everyone. They might say you'll make money online, through real estate, in the stock market, by selling goods, or in other ways. But the biggest signs of an income scam are when someone promises you'll make a lot of money using their methods. They pressure you to join fast, and they guarantee you'll be successful. Here's the reality. There's no such thing as a guaranteed way to make money. If you see an offer like that, it's a scam, period. The FTC has sued and shut down lots of companies that have made fake claims like that. Like this operation, the FTC sued for conning $54 million out of aspiring entrepreneurs.
Welcome. You're about to receive a very special guide that reveals how you can make six figures online in the next 90 days or less. No hype, no BS. Just the honest truth about what it takes to succeed online. What if an online millionaire offered you his entire business, no strings attached? What if he offered to walk you through every step of running this business, to train and coach you every step of the way? Do you think you'd be successful? Of course you would.
Unfortunately, the people who invested in that program didn't find success. Instead, they got a series of training videos and some less than helpful so-called coaching sessions, and they were out of their hard-earned money. So before you invest in a program that says you'll make a lot of money, stop. Take your time and do your research. Search online for the company name, plus words like scam, complaint, or review. Be skeptical about success stories and testimonials. They're too often misleading or just plain fake. Also, check with your state attorney general's office. If others in your community have reported a bad experience, that's a sign to walk away. If you see one of these offers, know that the only people getting rich are the scammers selling the system. So, if you think you've spotted an income scam, tell your friends, family, and neighbors so that they can protect themselves. And then tell the FTC at ReportFraud.ftc.gov. Thanks for watching. If this video was useful, give us a like, share with others in your community, and subscribe to get more tips from the FTC.
Okay, so now I'm going to pivot and talk a bit about protecting your information. Obviously, this relates to avoiding frauds and scams in general. If you protect your information, you can avoid some of these scams and identity theft. And we'll also kind of touch on things like social security number and disclosing some personal information, which also overlaps with job searching and so on. So first, I'll go through some quick cybersecurity basics that are really just key to kind of generally having a secure kind of control of your information. So the big one, and if you're going to walk away with one tip today, I'd say focus on updating your software. You want to keep your software, including your operating system, which is Microsoft or OS, your web browsers and apps up to date to protect against the latest threats. Most software can actually update automatically, so it's helpful if you can set yours to do so. Outdated software is easier for criminals to break into, and companies are generally continuously pushing out patches to fix these vulnerabilities, but you only get that protection if you actually download the update. I'm sure Annie and IT folks are probably also constantly harping on this, but this is a really big one. Second is to back up your files. So no matter how well you keep your system protected, no system is completely secure. So you're going to want to copy your files to an external hard drive or cloud storage. We recommend backing up your files once a week, and that makes it so if your computer is attacked by malware, that you still have access to your files. Okay. I had a video here, but I want to make sure that we have time for everything, so I'm going to keep going. So some other tips are use secure passwords. This one isn't new. Strong, long passwords, 12 characters, a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers and symbols. You want to avoid common words, phrases, or information in your password. And for any accounts that support it, turn on multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is where you have your account requires a second piece of information to log in, such as a code sent to your phone or a random number generated by an app. And this protects your account even if your password's compromised. So even if someone does have your password, it's unlikely they'll have both your password and your phone. So it gives you that extra layer of security. And then two last ones are secure your home network. So you're going to want to activate encryption. Encryption scrambles the information you send over the internet into a code so others can't access it. It's the most effective way to secure your network. Your computer, router, and other equipment must use the same encryption. WPA2 and WPA3 are the strongest, so use those if available. And then lastly, you're going to want to assume that public Wi-Fi is unsecured. So that means that you should assume that other users on the network can see what you see and send. So you're going to want to avoid using Wi-Fi to access personal or financial information. And if you're on the go and you need to access those accounts, we recommend using mobile data. Okay, so here's another big tip: don't overshare on social media. So identity theft really works like a puzzle that's made up of different pieces of personal information, and you don't want to give identity thieves the pieces they need to finish the puzzle. One of these pieces is your date of birth. Just by knowing the date and place of your birth, scammers can guess most of the digits of your social security number. And once they have the pieces they need, they can use that information to open new accounts in your name, claim tax refunds for themselves, and engage in other identity theft. If you post too much info about yourself, an ID theft can find info about your life and use it to answer challenge questions and get access to your money and personal information. Think of things like your mother's maiden name, what high school you went to, or what have you. Those kinds of things that people post on quizzes or what have you on social media without a second thought. Those can really lead to issues with identity theft. Recently, we did a blog post about how a lot of folks were sharing their COVID-19 vaccine, those sheets that say that you got the first or second vaccine, and they would have their full name, their date of birth on it, and we really are emphasizing that folks not share that information. We actually have we created a little image for folks to use instead that we have on our blog, just to kind of do the same, I'm excited I got my COVID-19 vaccine, but I'm not trying to give my information to identity thieves. Generally speaking, you're gonna just want to avoid posting your full name, social security number, address, phone number, or account numbers in publicly accessible sites. And with social security numbers, this one's interesting, right? So with social security numbers, I know that folks can ask for it often, and it's not always clear why they need it. So our big advice with whenever someone's asking for your social security number is to ask them questions. That is your information, and you need to take control of it and you need to protect it. So you're going to want to first ask if you can use a different kind of identification. Is there an account number I can use? Is there any other information I can use outside of my social security number? That's really personal information. I don't want to share it. If that is the information they need, then you'd want to ask some more questions. You can ask why they need it, how it will be used, how they will protect it, and what happens if you don't share the number. It might be that nothing happens. For some, with jobs, for if you're, filling out tax forms, you'll probably generally need to share that. But there could be circumstances where they're asking for that number and they don't need to. And you generally want to ask how they'll be protecting it too. You want to make sure that they, are putting it in a locked file, or they're, putting it in some sort of encrypted file if it's digital. You're going to just want to make sure that information is protected if you are sharing it. Okay, so lastly, I wanted to, actually second to last, I'm going to go over some free FTC resources. So related to what we've been talking about today are coronavirus scams, obviously timely. We have lots of tips and advice on how to avoid coronavirus scams. Right now, what's really big are vaccine scams. You can get that and other tips at ftc.gov/coronavirus. So definitely check that out. We have lots of one-pagers there. We have videos. And again, everything's in the public domain. So you can grab it, copy and paste it into, any newsletters you have, social media, what have you, and get this information out. Okay, so generally speaking, one of the best places to find kind of our overall library of consumer protection information is consumer.ftc.gov. We also have all of our information available in Spanish. So that's why I have our Spanish URL there as well. You'll see we have different topics, money and credit, privacy, identity, online security, and then kind of scams in general. These are, it's a great resource to get information on a variety of topics. We also have ConsumerAlerts, which are email blasts that you can sign up for. I know some folks grab those and put them in newsletters because they're usually pretty short, like 300 words or less. They're usually on like the latest fraud or scam. We also put stuff out on frauds or scams that are affecting students in particular. I've actually written a few on car app scams recently, so I definitely encourage that you sign up for those, and I will give you that link momentarily. We also have a resource that is what I like to think of like adulting 101. It's consumer.gov. It's really, consumer protection topics, just the basics. It's really kind of pared down. It's, easy to understand. We actually created this website with folks where English was a second language. So, generally speaking, all of our resources are written in plain language, but this is especially written, quite simply. And it's just what you need. It's not any extra. And so this is another great resource to check out. And if you're ever looking to order any of our materials, whether you want to order them as physical copies, they're free and they ship free. You can go to bulkorder.ftc.gov. You can also download PDFs there of all of our publications. Again, they're available in English and Spanish. And if you want to use them as digital tools, it's also a great place to kind of just access all of our PDFs. And lastly, I wanted to just flag reporting any fraud that you see to the FTC, whether or not you engage with the scammer, we want to hear about it. So if you see any of the frauds or scams we talked about today, or any frauds and scams in general, report it to us. It's a really quick, simple form. Tell us what happens. We'll tell you what to do next. And your report really helps us stop fraud. I showed you that video about the enforcement sweep we brought in December against, these income scams. And that was from reports that we had gotten from folks like you. And so that stuff really helps us, stop these frauds, stop these scams. And it also helps us with, education and kind of doing presentations like I'm doing today and knowing what's going on out in the world. And here are some quick links if you want to connect with us. If you want to sign up for our email blasts, you can go to ftc.gov/ConsumerAlerts. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And quickly before I hand this over to Goli, what can you do with this information? So, the big thing is really just talking about frauds and scams, finding ways to weave it into, programming or lessons. lesson plans you're doing with students, or talking with students one-on-one. If they bring you a job listing that seems somewhat suspect, it's a great opportunity to talk through, how to avoid these jobs, these job scams. Like I've been saying, you can also include any of this information in newsletters or through your social media. And yeah, just, being creative, finding, where can you slip this information in, because we're all seeing frauds and scams and they are affecting all of us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Goalie Trump.
Ari, thank you very much. I don't know how many of you are aware that the college has a very robust reporting line. We take unethical behavior very seriously, whether the source is external. Some of the information that was shared with you today by Roberta and Ari includes external, but we also do investigations on internal fraud. So our office, as a result of the increased awareness of fraud and what is happening out there. So a lot of the fraud that we're seeing is cyber related because we are in an internet realm. 10 years ago, it was very easy to be suspicious about someone knocking at your door with selling something to you, but now they don't have to knock on your front door. They actually can send you an email. And Roberta went through a lot of very detailed steps that she takes in order to ensure that the email is legit. So it's not as easy because these criminals, these fraudsters are smarter than all of us combined. Annie and her group in the IT security group do a lot of work to try to stay on top of protecting incoming mail, students, faculty, staff, and I encourage you all to continue to be diligent. If you don't know, you ask. And so again, faculty and staff, especially if you're unsure about fraud schemes or suspicious about anything, you ask. Our office is the primary point of fraud investigations. And again, one of the reasons that we work so closely with Roberta and Annie is because we want to make sure that the entire college, one, is not compromised by something that might have come in to a student, to a faculty, and two, we want to use that opportunity with the information we have to share it. And this, again, this does not supplant or replace what the FTC is asking for, which is data and metrics. But again, if you're unsure where to report, contact our office. You can contact Roberta, you can contact Annie, and we'll obviously, if there's good reason to do an investigation internally, we will. So what is an internal investigation? I want to tell you guys that we take this very seriously, as I said, and we have rigorous processes. I am a professional fraud investigator, and fraud entails not just cybersecurity and job scams through cyber or, bank checks. There's tons of different types of fraud, conflict of interest and everything. But today we're talking very specifically about the types of fraud that affect students, our student population. And but I do want to let you know what we do, so you're aware that it just doesn't go into a black hole. Roberta shared again what she does, and Annie does some work too that's very detailed into some of the tools, software and tools that the IT group has in order to determine whether or not something is a fraudulent email. We have a very extensive system for reporting your concerns. I'm not going to go through this, and for faculty and staff, you should have received a copy of this from your supervisor. If you haven't, you can go online and take a look for it. But for students' purposes, obviously, if you're reporting any type of concerns in the library or the athletics concerns, those also have places where you can report. But what we're talking about today is the primary reporting line for the college, which is called Ethics Point. And Ethics Point does have an anonymous option. And again, this does not replace what we want you to do in getting your help from Roberta, for example. So please remember that what we do with the reporting line at a very high level is, again, look for risks to the college that are broader. So if a student does report to us, and if it looks like something that either our IT group can take look at or Roberta can look into, we do refer it back to them. So I just want to make sure you understand that. But our reporting line tracks and measures this data, as just like the FTC is asking us to do. So when a report comes in, we do log it. We take a very extensive look at what the complaint is. If we feel that it is easily resolved, and the due diligence that we might ask Roberta or the IT group to do, we resolve it. We figure out if it affects other systems in the college. Roberta or Ari mentioned Wi-Fi. The college provides free Wi-Fi to all the students. And as Ari mentioned, if you're sitting on campus somewhere, nowadays you're not sitting on campus as much, but if you're sitting on campus and you're outside, it's a gorgeous day and you're checking your bank account, please pause before you do that. That is not as secure as going through the actual web app of the service, for example, your bank, your financial institution, and especially if you're not doing it from home with secured WAP2 or WPA2. So again, remembering that where you use Wi-Fi, a Starbucks, free Wi-Fi, any of these places really makes a difference. But again, we do look at those types of incidents that come in through the college's protected networks. You are provided email addresses. And so those are very important to us to make sure we are looking at. Once the investigation is concluded, we close the case. But again, we can track these numbers, look for trends, work with FTC on those trends, educate others. But I want to let you guys know that an investigation is always a fact-based, neutral process. So we're not looking to blame anyone unless blame exists. But in most of these cases, we usually don't know where it came from. We can find out that it's a fake email address. And Roberta mentioned an email that looked real because it addressed the student with the company name. I can tell you lots of stories where that very thing happens. And we've talked about phishing, but now there's smishing, which is SMS texting. So again, we really look to see what happened, who it affected, what the facts are, and what is the purpose of this investigation. I mentioned it's factual information. We have a very strong internal control environment at the college, including integrity and the tone at the top, which includes all of the people who spoke to you guys today, have a very real interest in making sure that the controls are in place to safeguard you. So some of the most common anti-fraud controls implemented include hotlines, cybersecurity, there's a whole list of them, but regardless, you are the eyes and ears of fraud. So if you see something, please bring it up. You help detect and prevent fraud.
I had a quick question for both Ari and Goli. How do you distinguish between a startup company and a scammer? Because we have a lot of small startups that come to us. And how would I tell the difference between the two if they're asking for my social security number for payroll?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think that there's a difference necessarily in whether it's a startup or a different type of company. I think it's the same sort of kind of process where you're going to do some due diligence, you're going to do some research, talk to folks that you trust. And if they're asking for your social security number, ask them why, ask them what happens if you don't give it to them. It's really the same. There's not kind of a special steps that you'd go to with them. I mean, I imagine with a startup, it could be more difficult to do that research. And so that's definitely something to, consider. And, you might have to go a kind of a different realm and try to maybe contact some current, employees at the firm. Maybe you look through LinkedIn. Maybe you have to be a little more creative with your research. But I think it's sort of all the same advice. Just, do your research, find out more about it, and don't just, haphazardly give out your personal information.
Yeah, I concur. The IRS, you can do a search on IRS, sometimes for business or in the state that they're incorporated in. So as Ari said, research, research, research. However, students, if you come across the information and you initiated the contact, you're in a better position than if they initiated the contact. So again, as Ari put out, there's a lot of questions you should ask, and most companies do not ask for your entire social security number. So you have to stop and ask, do I want to give this? Do I feel comfortable? And if you don't, follow your instincts.